You probably heard this at some point or other that bronze slaves or indigenous American slaves used braids in their hair to create maps in order to escape from the plantations and such. I want you guys to think about the next couple of questions I'm going to ask, because considering the fact that me and many other pages and, you know, as you see the people that I follow have disproved this slave trade theory that didn't actually happen that the way they told us. If we supposedly came from Africa, how did we know where to go? Who's telling us this? Who is sneaking onto the plantations, telling us where to go, and or braiding our hair to let us know where to go, when to go, and then they just leave? Who knows how to escape and go where? Whether you go north or south or east or west, wherever you are, whether you go overseas, you go downward to South America, go upward to Canada, how do you know that those places even exist if you just came off of a slave ship? And another question, from what I found out, supposedly they say that when they were putting people on the slave ships, they shaved their hair. I don't know with what, and if you're packing in hundreds of people, I don't know how you have time to shave all their heads off. But supposedly they shaved off a lot of the bronze people's hair. Not only that, the vast majority of people that were imported and moved around within the American continent, okay? Because now, okay, we're getting away from the theory and the lie. Now we're talking about what happened in reality. They were not transporting adults most of the time into slavery. They were transporting children, people who were under the age of 18 years old. Because I'm going to tell you something right now. You are not going to just up and capture millions of grown adult men, because the vast majority of slaves they wanted were male. Vast majority were male, not female. You are not going to fight all these grown adults who have been living out in the wilderness and surviving on their own and having their own conflicts with whoever else and who probably know how to fight. You are not going to take all these grown men with your measly, sucky guns back then and load them all up on the ship and they not fighting you? No, that did not happen. They were taking children. And so if most of the people they were taking were young children who were male, how are they growing their hair out long enough to be braided into intricate styles? And then they know where to go. I'm not understanding this. Because if you get the young children, you can teach them the language and everything like that. For an adult, it's a lot harder and more difficult for them to learn a new language. You're not going to just take an adult from another place, a whole nother country with a whole nother language and culture, and then come and tell them to pick some cotton or tobacco or build this or do that for you. They have no idea what you're talking about. No amount of beating or threatening is going to make them understand what you're trying to tell them. That's why they were getting children, because they can learn the language quicker. They can learn how to do stuff quicker. They can be indoctrinated easier. They can't really fight you that good because they're children. And another thing I heard too that doesn't make any sense, and think about this. They said that we also braided seeds and things from Africa into our hair to take over to the Americas so it will then escape and grow our own food. Now, if supposedly that happened, how are you planning for this entire scenario before you're even captured onto the ship? How do you already have seeds in your hair when you're captured and put onto the ship? Wouldn't you be wanting to figure out how to get away from that area if you knew that you're in a place where you might get captured? Because I read an article specifically saying just in case they were captured, they have seeds in their hair. If you know you're in an area where you might be put into slavery into an unknown land and you might potentially die in the process, why wouldn't you move away from that area? Why would you stay in that area? It's like, I just put seeds in my hair in case I get captured and thrown into slavery. So then when I escape, I'll be able to grow my own food. You don't know how to grow anything in a place you've never been. I can't go to the UK and make a farm there. At least not very well. I don't know the soil. I don't know anything unless somebody else who's already been there teaches me. And again, How are you doing this if they're supposedly shaving your heads? 2, if they're kidnapping children, which were the vast majority of people who were put into slavery, were the children, how would they have the foresight to do this? And is their hair even long enough to do something like this? Who is telling these people the roadways? Who is showing these people a map and braiding it in their hair and say, okay, this is this, this is this, this is this? How? Who is doing this? Who is sneaking onto the plantations and doing this? And if you know where all to go in the continent, or at least in the North American continent, then how are you able to escape detection by sneaking onto plantations, because that's where they said that we were living on, without getting caught, talking to the slaves, and then being able to just run off and leave and no one catches you? And if you did manage to escape, why wouldn't you formulate a plan to go back to Africa, where we supposedly came from, instead of staying here? Because that happened a lot in instances where there were actual Africans taken from West Africa. A lot of them mutinied and turned the ship back around, or they all just committed suicide and killed themselves. Because they weren't going to go do that. They refused. So how does this make sense? The only way this makes sense is which is what actually happened, they were kidnapping people within the Americas and moving them and shipping them within the Americas. So it was an intercontinental slave trade, not from Africa to Europe. And they sent some in different places, but most of this trading was done within the continent. That's how these people knew where to go, because they were taken from another place. They knew the landmass. This is where they grew up. That's how they knew, okay, there's a river here. I got to go through some valleys, go through a mountain. I'll see a canyon. I'll see these trees. I'll see, these type of animals, these fish. I'll hear this type of bird. They knew that because we were already been here. That makes more sense to enslave the people who already know how to work the land and just use force and violence to make them do that for you, instead of taking somebody from a whole nother continent who don't want to speak your language, you have no history or rapport with. They don't know how to grow nothing. They don't know how to do anything but what they've learned in their own continents. Why would you go and take somebody up from a different place when you can just come and strong arm somebody who's in the place where you want to be, in America? That's what happened. That makes more sense. Just go in, enslave the people who are already there. Make friends first, use religion, get some, make some of them Christians. Go in with like, hey, we're friendly. And then once you've integrated into the society enough, there's been language exchange so you can understand each other. That's when you bring in the guns and the army and you start slaughtering people and saying, hey, if you don't do what we tell you to do and grow these crops for us, then we're going to annihilate you, and just use the fear tactics, the lynchings, all that stuff. That's what happened. We didn't come from no Africa. We were already here. That's why we knew how to grow the stuff so well. Because the Caucasians didn't know how to grow that stuff. That's like one of the main reasons why they had someone else do it for them. So how the heck were they teaching us if we supposedly came from Africa, which meant we didn't know how to grow anything here. So nobody knew how to grow anything, but we just magically figured it out. No, we're growing that stuff because we were already here.